Hi, Massive D here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to bulletproof your utility ships, allowing you to survive interdictions from even the most lethal commanders out there. This will allow you to go into open play more often, adding some spice to your experience, without having much of a drawback. Now, this is a fine-tuned, complete build, meaning that it's not a meme build. It doesn't just work sometimes under special conditions or anything, it just works and can be used for day-to-day operations. Although, when I say bulletproof, it doesn't actually mean that your ship will suddenly develop God mode, allowing it to face tank hordes of enemy ships without taking any damage. Instead, it will allow you to comfortably and consistently deal with and escape ganks of any magnitude. My ship of choice for the purposes of the video is the Type 7. I figured that as far as utility ships go, the Type 7 is both viable and easy to acquire, especially for beginners. However, the methods showcased in the video, with a slight bit of tinkering, can be applied to any ship of your choice. So, let me show you exactly what I mean by bulletproof. This is Jason Barron. He is quite a legend amongst warring commanders, very well known from never backing down from a fight, no matter how strong or tough the opponent is. To put in perspective, this man has spent more credits fighting Smiling Dog Crew terrorists than anyone I know, including myself, and is heavily respected even amongst them. Since he spars with SDC frequently, he knows a lot of their tricks, and today, he's flying a piece of their technology, dubbed Demon of the Void, the infamous SDC variant, Ferdinand. That's right, this type of ship has claimed more innocent lives in Elite Dangerous than any other ships put together. If you ever read complaints on the forums of people telling stories and cursing open play for losing their trading ships and mining ships with mere seconds of an interdiction, majority of those casualties were inflicted by this type of ship. Meanwhile, I'm in my little Type 7 that could. Jason has his orders to kill and not hold back. Let's see what happens.
Under attack. Frame shift drive charging. 4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
As you can see, we didn't blow up in 5 seconds. We didn't blow up at all, actually. Now, there were multiple factors working together that kept us alive through that engagement, and we are going to talk all about them in detail. But first, we need to understand some core mechanics of the ship and what makes it tick. So let's look at the build. First, and probably the most exciting factor, are those shock mine launchers. During the engagement, if you were paying attention, you probably noticed that I was using 4 launchers, but with testing and fine-tuning, I worked out that 2 of them is all you really need, which is great news if you want to use Type 7 as a miner, as you can also equip some mining lasers and still be as effective at escaping ganks. The really spicy bit about these launchers is the engineer effect I modified them for, called Ion Disruptor. The effect says that all ships caught in the blast radius of these mines will have their thrusters rebooted, and it takes roughly 10 seconds for them to come back online. And also, shock mines inherently knock ships about, throwing them off course and preventing them from aiming at you, and by the time they recover, you will already be piecing out of the gank, leaving your attackers defeated and confused. These things are outstanding, but believe it or not, they are not the core of this build. Just sort of like an icing on the cake, mainly there to prevent your opponents from having a clear line of sight on your ship. That being said, it is very important, because a lot of gankers these days are now carrying containment missiles, which can absolutely ruin your day, but by using these mines, you will prevent your opponents from being able to hit you with a missile unless they want to eat a fistful of said mines, and in that exchange, by the time their thrusters reboot, your FSD will also have rebooted and you will be too far away for them to land another shot. Moving on to utilities, the first 2 slots are debatable. A very good option is to use shafts, which will shield you from your typical wannabe pirates. However, against experienced gankers it probably won't work, because they will most likely be using fixed weaponry. Heavy-duty shield boosters are also a good choice, but also rather unnecessary as the plan is to not stick around for long enough for them to matter. What I personally use and would like to suggest that you do as well is to use 2-point defense installations. That is an extra layer of defense against a stray containment missile, although it's sort of like wearing a full body condom, which is just being paranoid really, but the reasoning behind this is, if you don't get hit by a stray or lucky containment missile, you will be able to out-tank any damage currently out there for long enough to jump out of the instance, so it's more of an insurance than a necessity. For the other 2 slots, it's very important that you use 2 resistance augmented boosters. I will explain why when I get to shields, but trust me for now. Moving on to core internals, the armor. This is probably the most interchangeable module, and it's really up to you what you wish to use for this slot. It really depends on the meta and what kind of ships and builds you are being ganked by the most. If you're seeing gankers with nothing but lasers, go for mirrored surface bulkheads. If your opponents are using all multi-cannons or flat cannons or missiles, go for reactive surface composites. And as always, military composites are a good all-around safe bet. It really doesn't matter, as long as you mod them for heavy duty to raise up your hit points. For the power plant, there is only one valid choice: it has to be overcharged. As you can see on the bottom, my maximum output with this build is 20.42 megawatts, and fully deployed, the ship consumes 20.35 megawatts. Now, I have a good roll on this power plant, but it doesn't matter that much, since you can always do power management for your ship, and set low priority to stuff like the cargo hatch and the fuel scoop, which will give you more than enough spare power even on an average roll. For the thrusters, just like the power plant, you have only one valid choice, and it pretty much gives you another wing condition, on the Type 7 in particular. So it is very important that you get at least an above average roll. If I remember correctly, plus 33% is the maximum that you can get without getting a god roll, but above plus 27% is what you should be looking at. If you look at the bottom left of the screen, with plus 33 multiplier, I have 411 meters per second boost speed, which is absolutely crazy for this type of ship, because that is Furtherlands and Imperial Cutter territory, which is very useful because it means that to keep up with you, they will have to be boosting in a straight line behind you, which will put them in a perfect position to get spoon-fed with a fistful of mines. And if your attacker is piloting a Federal corvette, Anaconda, Python, or other slower ships, then you can just simply outrun them without having to do much else. For the frameshift drive, it's a no-brainer to have increased jump range, but if you're doing A to B trading, you usually won't need more than 15 light years of jump range, so you could consider having an armored frameshift drive for added protection. For the life support, it's almost always correct to take rank D, since they weigh the least. Less weight equals more speed. Same thing with the sensors. For the power distributor, I prefer to have Charge Enhanced one, and it works well with this build. You can probably get away by using Engine Capacity 1, but overall I feel that Charge Enhanced is safer. And obviously the biggest fuel tank that you can fit, although if you're doing A to B trading, you can actually consider reducing the tank by half, which will give you extra speed, which is great. Can't go wrong with extra speed really. Moving on to optional internals. Now, the rule of thumb with this build is super simple, and it's the same for every ship you will use this with. The highest grade slots you should use for cargo racks. In the case of Type 7, these are grade 6, since after all, you need to make profits. Otherwise, what's the point? Take one slot that is one grade lower than your highest grade, in our case it's the grade 5, and put a prismatic shield generator in said slot. However, if you don't have access to prismatics, normal shields will be enough. However, prismatics are objectively better in this case, so you may want to consider getting them, especially since they are pretty easy to acquire, just has a time gate, like all power play modules. I will be making a video soon explaining the easiest way to get them, so keep a lookout. What is really important though, and this will directly affect your survival, is that you must engineer the shields with thermal resistance effect. As you can see from the statistics in the top right corner, shields are inherently bad against thermal weapons, such as lasers or incendiary round munitions, which is bad news since incendiary round multi-cannon and flak launchers are extremely popular right now. Luckily, thermal resistant modification is one of the most potent effects in the game, adding a whopping plus 60% thermal resistance on a maximum roll, while only having a tiny decrease in kinetic protection. But since shields are inherently good against kinetic weapons, as you can see from stats, modding like this leaves you with a very well-rounded protection against all types of damage. And with resistance augmented shield boosters in the utility slots that we mentioned before, to strengthen this even further, will allow you to deflect gankers' weaponry for long enough for you to escape. And from the testings that we did, it doesn't really matter what the gankers are flying. Cutters, anacondas, federal corvettes, further lances, literally does not matter. Unless you somehow mess up really badly, no ship will be able to blow you out of the water. And if you're getting ganked by a wing, due to how instancing works, the person whom interdicted you will drop down at the same time as you, but his comrades will take around 10 to 15 seconds to get in and fully deploy. And by that time, you should already be well on your way out, so it won't matter. The last rule of thumb when it comes to optional internals is to use the lowest grade slot for resistance, as it doesn't matter grade 5 or grade 1, hull reinforcement packages modded for resistance will have the exact same level of resistance. The only different variable is going to be boost to hull points, but since we nearly have 2,000 of them, already some of the largest military ships will be looking at us and rubbing their eyes saying god damn. For the Type 7 here, I had to use spare slots for resistant packages, although I personally chose to fill one of them with a module protection package. It never came down to this, but in theory, if I would mess up so badly that I would lose my shields and still need time to escape, this can actually tank a lucky railgun or penetrator missile shot to thrusters or frameshift drive. I don't think it's necessary to have, but I personally like the idea of having that one last layer of defense to negate variables, which may matter when facing a really high competence attacker. And speaking of high competence attackers, here's Jason, swooping in for another attempt to blow me up. Now that we know and understand the build, let's analyze the strategy. After all, any machine is only as good as the person behind its controls. Immediately upon dropping down, fire 4 pips to engines, pick a direction and boost towards it. Turn flight assist off to maintain the boost speed, and switch pips to systems, which strengthens your shields. You can adjust your ship in order to place the attacker directly behind you, like I'm doing here. It's almost like aiming and ensuring your mines hit. Deploy mine launchers and start laying down the carpet, keeping an eye out for this indicator below the attacker's ship icon. It means that he ate a mine and his thrusters are rebooting. Now's your chance, boost away and jump out. In this scenario, I am doing a low wake, during which I am also affected by mass locking, but Jason is so far behind that it no longer matters. However, if you are being attacked like this in the open, never low wake, do a high wake instead to another system. And you won't be mass locked, which will make the escape a whole lot easier. Things to keep in mind. Number 1. It helps if you have a button set up to automatically select attackers, which then gives you the ability to see when they hit a mine. Number 2. When using filters in your navigation panel, it's best to leave systems readily available, so during a gank you can select one and high wake instantly. Number 3. Watch out for incoming missile warnings, pitch, yaw and sway when you hear them. Point defenses will keep you safe, most of the time, but it's best if you don't give your attackers a straight line of fire. That is all. Thanks for watching.